Let me show you how we built this grape arbor and berry corral. I'm only a marginally better builder than I am an artist, but that's a little sketch of what we're going to make. We've already put in the 4x4 post. We did that back in the fall when we moved the plants over to this location, but we did have to go to Home Depot to get some supplies. Here's what three 4x4 posts will run. And we already had the some of the 2x4s, but this is what 9 of them will cost. We had the wire already, had the screws already, and that's the total for your new things from Home Depot. But you'll need this off Amazon. We got this from Harbor Freight, and I made a mistake, so I had to go back and buy those. More about that later. This first post with the level sitting on it over the winter has become very wonky. It was level and square when we put it in, and now it's kind of slanted toward the center pole and a little bit toward the fence. So we're going to have to take care of that. These 2x4s that we're putting up first are basically just to hold these posts as level and square as is possible with that wonky post that we're going to deal with. So we're just going to put these temporarily tacked up there with a single screw. And notice the level. It is my intention to have these as square as possible. So let's try to keep them level. And just to give us an extra set of hands, this is like a 3-inch nail that I'm just going to tack in there. That's going to hold up one edge of the post until we get it screwed in. And because we're dealing with this post on the end that's a troublemaker, we need all the extra hands we can get. We spend a whole lot of time here trying to decide how to move this post and get it straight. What we finally decide to do is get the lawnmower out and use that to kind of pull it so it will be upright in one direction. From this angle, it doesn't look too bad, but when we get up close here, you'll see what the problem is. I'll put the level on it to show you a little better. Yeah, that's just one direction. On the other side of the post, it's just as bad. So Rod pulls the mower up, and that works for one direction, but we're trying to stay off the neighbor's lawn because it's kind of wet. We have another conversation about what to do. Rod's thinking he's going to go grab something else, but I've kind of already decided that we're going to use the fence post and wrap this rope around the fence post, and which will pull it more at an angle, which is what we need. Inch by inch, we get it just fine. This lumber that we got from Home Depot was not perfect by any stretch, but we didn't want to go back. And because this is going to be hidden, this kind of beveled edge off of this wood, and you'll see I'm flipping it all different ways to try to figure out how to make it less noticeable. We finally figure that out. And now I've decided that maybe I should figure out the center of each of these boards. These are 2 feet long, and we get the center marked, and then I, of course, just decide to eyeball it on the top. Rod is going to go ahead and just drill it in. He's going to put in 1 hole and 1 screw here just to hold it in place, and then I'll do the one on the outer side. Now, guys, learn from my mistake. Just go ahead and make sure everything squares up with both ends of your post, because we had a little issue where one of these, actually the one that Rod is working on, is too far. It's not perfectly even. Let's just put it that way. So I'm not going to show us fixing that, but basically we just had to take it off and move it over about a half an inch to fix that problem. And it doesn't become apparent until you put the outer boards on. This is basically just creating a box around the top of the post. Once we get that in place, then we're just going to move to the second and third post and do exactly the same thing, but you guys be a little more exact in your measurements than we were. By the time we got to the third post, Rod had grabbed a couple of our little bar clamps here, And we were using that for another set of hands, which was very helpful. And we do try to stagger these holes so they're kind of on a diagonal where we can. There are some knots in this wood, so sometimes we kind of have to work around it. While I finish up with this screw driving, let me just tell you that the reason that you want your post to be less than 8 feet edge to edge is because this outer board is going to stick out from the 8 feet measurement that I just didn't plan on. So that topmost post is sticking out 1.5 inches, and then the one on the opposite side is sticking out 1.5 inches. So when we take these 2x4s that I'm hoping just to slap up there and screw drive them in, we've got a big gap, not a bigger gap, a big gap. I didn't plan on there being any gap because anytime I have a project like this, I'm trying to make sure that we, number one, use what we've got. Number two, don't spend a lot of money. Number three, don't have a lot of waste. And unfortunately, in this case, we are going to end up with some wasted boards, and they won't go to waste. We'll use them for another project, but it's unfortunate. So my camera didn't get turned on for the rest of this boxing out the upper part of the arbor. Suffice it to say, there was a 3+ inch gap in between these front pieces of wood and the same on the back. So what we decided to do is just put a 2x4 by 12 foot that's cut to the right size on the front and the back. So that was a little bit of extra money. We're going to move down the post now and create the berry corral, which is just going to be some 2x4s that are cut either 1 or 2 feet long. And in this case, this is the upper portion of it, and we've measured down from the post. Just do whatever height is comfortable for you. I think I did roughly about chest height here, and we'll put 2 screws in. Now here's another thing that I wish I had done differently. I put all of these pieces of wood on the same side. I wish the ones on the end had both been to the outside of the post, because then you would have the bulk and the concreted post holding this wire apart instead of 2 screws on this inner chunk of 2x4. So it just would have been a little sturdier. But because these wires are basically just to hold the raspberry bushes in to keep them kind of corralled, thus the name, it won't really matter because these are not going to support a lot of weight. Again, we're just going to use our clamp here to get these holes drilled and then to get the screws set. I think these lower boards, we again measured down from the uppermost upright, and it was maybe another 2.5 feet. So it ends up being about a foot off the ground. We go ahead and take our 9-gauge wire. I pre-drilled some holes in those so we could just string this wire. Now this 9-gauge wire, guys, is really heavy. And last time we used it, we used my Dremel tool to cut it, but we went ahead and bought from Harbor Freight a $20 bolt cutter or cable cutter. And we had planned on using that to also crimp the ferrules that we're going to use, and that ended up not working so great. So we've got a piece of, actually it's a part of a fireplace andiron kind of thing, and we use that to pound the anvils against to make sure that they're set. So you'll see this wire is kind of wavy, which is perfectly fine. Once these raspberries get going, you're not even going to notice it. Now, as far as the uprights go, or the cross pieces in the top of the arbor, I just measured every 18 inches. That ended up being just about perfect spacing between these. And I just put 1 screw on the front and 1 screw on the back. And so there were 4 of those on each side, 18 inches apart. And basically they're 2 feet long, but we did have to do a little, some of them were 23 and 3/4. A couple of them were 23 and 7/8, but generally 2 feet long is what you're aiming for. And why the difference? That's because of this wonky post. But all in all, we're very happy with how it turned out. We put a couple birdhouses up above. I haven't yet taken and tied up my grapes and my raspberries, but I think it turned out pretty nice. We're very happy with it. So including the cable cutters that we bought, this ended up being about $160. That includes the 2 pieces of 12-foot 2x4 I had to buy. We hope you enjoyed this project from Famish Farm. I'm Jackie. Please subscribe and come back and see our next project.